My wife built our entire relationship on a lie and wants me to forgive her. My wife and I attended her sister's wedding a little while ago, and right before it started, my wife took me outside to talk. She made me promise not to be angry, then revealed that 4 years ago, while we were dating, she had an affair with the groom's best man. She wanted me to be respectful towards him when I saw him. Apparently, the affair didn't mean anything to her. It wasn't a big deal, and she hopes I can just let it go. Before I even responded, she left and went back inside. I was extremely hurt, but I just kind of sat there. It took me a few minutes to stand up, but I went to the wedding and sat there alone, watching everything. After the wedding, I got to the reception, and my wife finally gets there and sits with me. I decided not to say anything as I didn't want to distract from the day. But instead of just letting it go, my wife then tells me that each of the groomsmen and bridesmaids are going to dance, and that she is going to be dancing with the best man. I ask why when she was not his partner for the party, and she said that the maid of honor and her partner were actually married and wanted to dance with each other. At this point, I'm a little more than perturbed, but I try not to let it show. Thankfully, I was smart enough not to drink because I freely admit I'm an angry drunk, so I know when not to even partake. My wife talks to everyone around her, and then the dance comes, and he comes over and extends his arm, and she gets up. I try not to watch, and in fact, I make it a point not to. She comes back with him in tow, and they are joking like the best of friends. She decides that it would be a good idea to introduce us, and while I didn't say to F off like I wanted to, my greeting to him was probably more than cordial, but it did not deter him from sitting and talking with her for a few minutes. The more they sat and talked and reminisced about old times and places, the madder I got. Eventually, I got up and went to the bathroom, and when I came back, he was gone. She decided to tell me that she thought I was rude, which was not what I was all about hearing at the moment. I told her that this wasn't the time or place to talk about it, but rest assured we would talk later. She sat there and then said that she was going to change clothes, and as soon as she got back, she was telling her sister that we were leaving because I had ruined her day, but she didn't want me to ruin her sister's day as well. She gave out to me for being rude to him and not being respectful like she told me to be. I ended up leaving early, and then she came home a little while later. I was sitting in the living room waiting for her when she came in and did not beat around the bush. I simply asked her to retell me the story about this other guy, and she said it word for word like before. After sitting and looking at her for a time, I reminded her that we had been together for 5 years, so this fling was well over a year into our being together. What happened next I can't really put into words. Instead of being flustered or denying or anything, she simply said, "I know." So I asked her to explain, and she tells me that they worked together and that it was just a physical thing. She felt like we weren't in a great place at the time, and that she never had any feelings for him and never had any real intentions of leaving me. She just was having some fun for a few weekends. She said that it was probably a mistake on her part to tell me now, but she didn't want me to get blindsided. I did not take this the way she thought I would, but I guess we had a very large argument, and it ended when she told me I was being a child about all of this. That we were married, and this happened way before that, and our life together now has nothing to do with him or that time. Well, 2 things. 1, I adamantly disagree that this has no bearing on us. She cheated on me and doesn't even have the goddamn decency to feel guilty about it. 2, I hate being told I am childish when I get upset over something. It ticks me off to no end because that is her way of acting superior to me. I told her I needed time to think, and she told me there was nothing to think about. We loved each other, and this didn't change anything. That was 2 weeks ago, and I still am not over it. She has been trying the past few days to get me to talk to her, but I admit that for whatever reason, I'm not viewing her the same as I did before. This update, there have been developments, but all they have done is make it harder for me to decide. Last week, I was mostly angry. Then, as the weekend progressed, I became mostly sad. And then one day, she finally came to the realization that I was not going to just get over this. This then brought her to the realization that I might want out of the marriage. This then brought on a near nervous breakdown from her. Soon, it became apparent that she was having a legitimate panic attack. This led to an visit, and that led to an overnight stay in the hospital, and then to new medications and a scheduled follow-up with her doctor for later next week. This brought her family into it. and that in turn led to long conversations all the way around. When we got home with her family in tow, I asked what she wanted to do since there was a house full of people, and she said she wanted to be with her mom for a while. That was fine with me, as I had no desire to hang around all day with her dad or sister. So I said I was going to go finish up something at work and would be home later. 2 hours after I get there, I get a text from her begging me to please come home and that she really needs me to talk with her. So I finished up what I was doing and headed home. I was greeted on my own front porch by her dad, who asked if he could talk to me for a minute. My anger level was already somewhat high, but I was ready to go to war if she had dumped a sack of lies on me with her dad. We sat on our deck chairs, and he floored me with his opening salvo. I was expecting to hear anything but what he said. He said that she told them what had happened, and that he wanted to apologize to me because he said that he felt like he did a really bad job as a parent, and that this mindset that she had was really a creation of her mother's. That while he loved both of them, he said they were wrong, and he had told his wife years ago that telling the girls that whatever happens before marriage doesn't count was a horrible idea and value system to install in them. He then said that he wasn't there to stand up for what his daughter did, but he just wanted me to be aware that what she was saying and how she was acting was simply because she honestly believed that being married was an entirely different life, and that they had romanticized marriage to the point that she wasn't understanding real life. Basically, he was kind of throwing his wife under the bus, but again, this is not what I was expecting at all. We shook hands, and he said that no matter what I decided, he still thought very highly of me, which honestly made me feel really good for that moment. I then went inside, and my wife is curled up in a ball on her mom's lap, and you can tell she's been crying the entire time I've been gone. Mom gets up and comes and hugs me and tells me she is sorry and that she loves me and she is praying that we can work this out. My wife is laid out on the couch at this point. Her mom and dad leave, and she sits there looking at me and crying. I went to her, and we hugged for a long time, with her telling me over and over how sorry she was. I know it was the weak thing to do, but again, I have to say in my defense that just before this incident occurred, I loved her with all of my heart and would have done anything to not see her in pain. Whatever she had done, I still didn't want to see her like that. After a while, when she calmed down, I asked her what she wanted me to come home and talk about, and she said she wanted to get everything out in the open, so I didn't feel like I was being lied to or manipulated. So she wanted me to ask her questions, and I wish I had written down a list, but I came up with a few off the top of my head. She was brutally honest with me, and some of the questions I asked I probably shouldn't have, because now the mental image is stuck in there. But honestly, it was there anyway. I just now have confirmation. First, I asked for dates, or at the very least approximate dates, and she remembered exactly when they occurred. Fortunately, this happened a little earlier in our relationship than she told me initially, so we were not engaged when this happened. Second, I asked how many times she went overboard with this, because instead of just telling me how many different dates, she decided to tell me how many times there was full-blown intimacy. This part of the conversation didn't help me at all, and in fact, almost broke me down. There were 6 different days it happened on, but there were several times during those 6 days. Then came the hard part. Why did she do it? I couldn't get this out without starting to cry. I asked why wasn't I good enough, why him, why did she not just leave me? It was her turn to hold me because at this point, everything came rushing at me. Her telling me having to watch them laugh with each other, her now telling me how many times they did it and where they did it. She talked during this, but to this moment, I have no idea what she said. I was too upset, and honestly, nothing she was going to say was going to make a bit of difference anyway. But after I composed myself, I simply told her that the betrayal was horrible. But honestly, her response to me when I found out was just as bad, if not worse. She agreed with me, and she apologized for calling me immature. She said that she honestly believed that it wouldn't matter to me now because we were married. I started to say something about it, but she jumped in and said that after talking with her parents, she now sees that this was very wrong of her and that cheating is cheating. But she still feels like that our happiness that we have shared since being married should count for something. I then replied that I kind of felt like that happiness was built on a lie. This led to another breakdown on her part and almost another visit. But between Ativan and having her breathe into a paper sack, we got her calmed down. I let her sleep the rest of the night, feeling like emotionally we were both tired. But come Sunday, we were talking again. By this time, I wasn't as sympathetic as I had been when we got home from the I told her that I thought her introducing him to me was crappy. Me having to watch her dance with him was extra crappy, and the fact that she only told me because she was going to get caught was an elite level of crappy. Which then I demanded to know why did she think I would find out, and how many of the people at the wedding knew besides me. Well, obviously the guy knew, but then his best friend in the world also knew, which then led to her sister finding out, and she was afraid her sister was going to be the one to tell me. I asked how often she sees this guy, and she said that the wedding is the first time she has seen him in 3 years. Then I lost it and asked her if she him during any of the lead up to the wedding. She got all mad about it, acting like she wouldn't sleep with anyone because she was married, and I just lost it and had to leave for a while because once again, I felt like she was living on married planet. I finally got cooled off enough to come home and try and be civil about things. She finally asked me what she could do to help me get past all of this, which may not sound like much, but it was the first time she offered to help me really, so it was at least a nice gesture. I told her I wasn't sure what she could do or if there was anything either of us could do, and that I may never get over this. She said that she wanted to help because she didn't want to see me in pain, and that over the years, she hopes I'll be able to judge her based on who she is now. She would do anything I wanted to work this out. She also wanted to be sure that I knew that she has been 100% faithful since we've been married and would never cheat on her. Val, I sarcastically thanked her. I then asked for a moratorium from further talks till at least Wednesday. Update 2. Well, last night finally arrived, and we had what my dad always called a come-to-Jesus meeting. I got home from work and I brought dinner so there would be no distractions of cleanup or anything. We started talking around 6 p.m. and finally ended around 2 a.m. In that time frame, we laid out a lot of issues that have been present and what or if we are both willing to do to move forward. Long story short, starting today, I am living with my brother for the next while. She is understandably upset by all of this, and I'm making an effort to communicate openly with her so she does not feel abandoned or neglected. If you're wondering how we got from talking to me living with my brother, here it is in a nutshell. I want to save my marriage, but I can't do it living what I feel was somewhat a lie. I know she never intended to lie once we were married, but when I sat down and thought about this one question, would I have stayed with her if I had known at the time she did this? Each and every time I answered no. So to me, she took away my ability to choose whether or not I wanted to continue, and we built the next few years based on the foundation of something that wasn't quite true. However, the truth is we still built something. Sometimes foundations can be repaired, and sometimes you have to tear them down to build new ones. This is what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping to shake things up enough for both of us so that we can start over. But there were some very troubling things that occurred due to this, and here is a brief synopsis of our talk. I laid out the fact that while I absolutely was upset about the cheating, and yes, I still consider it cheating, which she has now come to realize that this is the way it is and is going to be considered. I was equally upset by her lack of consideration for my feelings on this. I told her that I resented being told I was immature and a child for something that, objectively speaking, I had every right to be upset about. Her response was to apologize and tell me she was in the wrong, and that while she admits fault and sees what I'm saying, that at the time she had convinced herself that because we were married, that I was wrong to be upset about something that happened beforehand. But she now sees where this is wrong. I then told her that I felt very disrespected by her associating with this guy right in front of me, and that I felt humiliated having to shake his hand. Her response was to once again apologize, and she said that in her mind at the time, she felt like she was trying to show me that there was nothing there. She said she felt like if she avoided him or acted shady around him, that I would be more upset. I told her she was wrong. She said that out of all of the things, this is the one that has hit her the most in the face because even her sister has told her how poor this was for her to do to me, and she was deeply hurt by this because it had hurt me, which she never wanted to do. I then talked about her lack of remorse over being with someone else while we were together. Her only response was to say that she was very sorry, that at the time, she just used very poor judgment, and if she could go back and change the past, she would. Then came the talk that got the most discussion. how I felt like she really wasn't sorry for anything, but that she was just sorry that I didn't just shrug my shoulders and say that everything was going to be okay. That there were going to be repercussions for what I considered to be an act of betrayal and then an act of not caring about me. I'll give her full credit here. She was brutally honest about this, and at least she was, so we didn't have to spend hours trying to work our way around it. She admitted that when we got home after the event, she started to realize that I wasn't going to let this go. And then as time went on, she knew that this was an issue. Her first instinct was to be mad at me for being mad at her, but then realized even from her own point of view how stupid that was. But again, she had it beat into her head that she was my wife, and that I should easily forgive and forget something that happened way before we were married. She also admitted that when it became real, she frankly outright panicked thinking about losing her marriage. Nobody on either side of her family is divorced, so she could be the first, and she admitted to that being a big factor in her panic attack. But as the week has progressed and she has spoken more to her family, she is seeing that what she has put in her mind about marriage isn't the end-all, be-all she thought it was. She also did really feel bad about bringing the guy around to me. However, you will notice, which I did too, that she never said she felt guilty about being with him. I have set out the following steps if we are to reconcile, and it is totally up to her if she wants to stay together. I don't care how illogical it seems. She is to never have contact with him again. This is an absolute for me and a deal breaker, and I was absolutely clear on this. We have to have couples therapy while I am living with my brother. We are still legally married, and this is not an invitation or excuse for either of us to see anyone else again. Deal breaker in a second if either of us uses this as an excuse. We start over to a point. I have to view her differently now, even if I didn't want to. I can't just forget that she chose to cheat, so that's where we are now. We are going out on a date Friday night, which she is really looking forward. I handed her the paperwork in a manila envelope and explained what it was before she opened it. I also made it very clear to her that I was not going to do anything with it unless we both failed to meet the conditions we both agreed upon. I explained that I was committed to us, but I really needed to see that we were headed in the right direction and that this was only there as a standby in case she didn't think I was serious. Well, this did not go over as well as I had hoped, and in retrospect, this was a mistake on my part. She had been doing everything in her power prior to that to live up to the agreement. We had been out on several dates prior to this that were great for both of us. In other words, my timing sucked. My intention was good, but it did make it look like I was not acknowledging the steps she was taking to make this work. This led to another giant anxiety attack that we could not get under control with her meds, so off to the ER we went again. This time they gave her a shot and sent her home, and we both agreed that we would keep her family out of it. This time I stayed with her for 2 days just to make sure she was okay. This, of course, came up in our counseling session, and, well, let's just say that I came across looking like a manipulative a-hole, which again, in retrospect, I was. I ended up taking my copy and her copy and tearing it up in front of her. She doesn't know there is a third copy, but I plan on having him discard that as well. So now I pretty much feel like a monster because the look on her face when she got the divorce papers was something I never want to see again. She was so happy to see me that day, and then I gave her that, and then an instant combination of sadness and terror. Other than that bump in the road, things have actually been going very well. Well enough, in fact, that I am moving back home this weekend. I am going home because she has done everything I have asked of her, and I have put her through hell. I think she's paid a steep enough price, and I know she knows how serious this was. Also, in case I didn't mention this before, I do love her. She made a very stupid, selfish mistake, but it was years ago, and she had been almost the perfect wife up until that discovery. Also, I am not a cuckold.